leading organizations with intentionality and purpose is complex work, and dedicated leaders work tirelessly each and every day to build impactful cultures of collaboration. But effective collaboration is difficult and messy. The good news is you don't have to do it alone. Join the Jigsaw Learning team for leading collaborative response, sharing insights for leaders committed to establishing, refining, and deepening collaborative response in their organization.
Welcome back to Leading Collaborative Response. You're going to notice a little bit of a change as we start to see some shifts in the way that we do our podcasting here at Jigsaw Learning. So not only today am I joined by Kurtis and Lorna Hewson, the founders and lead learners with Jigsaw Learning, but we have our first Leading Collaborative Response guest in Erin Norrish, who is the Early Learning Coordinator in Grasslands School Division. So hi, Erin, and hi, Kurtis and Lorna.
Hi, Jen. Hi, Erin.
Hi.
And just for those that are either watching on YouTube or taking it in from whatever podcast provider you are utilizing, our intention is that as we move into the new year, that are putting the pieces podcast, we are infusing it in with Leading Collaborative Response, so that Leading Collaborative Response really does become that series that allows us to explore concepts that are integral when leading collaborative response, but then also the opportunity to meet with partners such as Erin, who are engaging in the work out in the field at ground level, we could say. So we're really excited about the leading collaborative response shift and how we can integrate not only our understandings, but the understandings of those implementing with their teams.
So excited to have you join us today, Erin.
Yeah, I'm really excited to be here to share and have a conversation.
Awesome. So Jen, I'll turn it back over to you, my friend.
Absolutely. So as things begin to shift, and I get to say one of the greatest opportunities that I've had is when Kurtis and Lorna get to connect me with the partners that they've had the opportunity to work with. And as I kind of start to move into the background and connect it to WeCollab, as that starts to pick up, I won't have these opportunities. So I'm very excited that I do get to speak with you, Erin, because Lorna has spoken very highly of you. But for our audience, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your role in Grasslands?
Sure. So I knew that I wanted to be a teacher way back in kindergarten. And my very first writing sample actually in kindergarten stated those intentions. That good old question of what do you want to be when you grow up was a teacher. And so it just happens so fast. I've now been teaching for 16 years and I'm looking forward to probably another 16 or 17. But those 17 years I know are going to fly by as well. So I think that the successes and the challenges within education make every day new and exciting. And so I started to dive into that lead learner opportunity about 9 years ago. And I'm also loving that work and really working to drive the student learning and team culture is really important to me.
Erin, it's such a great point that you make about, we just get the opportunity to refresh and renew, both every year with a new group of students or every year with a new staff team, but that opportunity to continually grow and learn alongside of both our students and our colleagues is pretty exciting.
Yeah, it definitely is. So Grasslands is a school division in the southern part of our province. And so we have a great mix of rural schools and city schools, and we also have 7 colony schools. And so the early learning coordinator in Grasslands is the facilitator of our pre-kindergarten and kindergarten programming across our division. So I work as an advocate to support our earliest learners. And then I also work alongside our early learning staff to coach them towards optimal student learning. And our early learning programs here in Grasslands are designed to meet the complex needs of our 2-year, 8-month-old students all the way up to 6 years old. And so we're really striving to establish those foundational skills that our students need to be successful in grade 1 and all the way up to graduation.
It is so important, those years, those early years. And, we know that a child's success and the support that they receive at that point is so integral to their success later on. And we see that presented in the research all the time. So yeah, you have a pretty important job, Erin, being able to support those early years, teachers and staff.
I was just going to say, it is a great job. It would be my dream job.
I do have to share, I have a personal experience in relation to this, not as a kindergarten teacher, but as a child of a lifelong kindergarten teacher. My mother taught kindergarten. So my earliest experiences was after school when I was younger, being able to come over and just play in that environment. And then later it became the earliest opportunities that I had to essentially informally intern, because if I came over after school, I was going to get put to work putting up bulletin boards, organizing books, getting centers ready. It kind of gave me that firsthand view into, okay, there's some stuff that happens with teaching that I need to be aware of. There was often days where I go, I'm going to catch the bus instead of wandering over to the kindergarten room, because I know mom's got this project ready for me to go with.
Yeah, I'd be curious to know how many things you laminated or photocopied or cut out.
I can remember I got the laminating job once at an early age, and then it was taken away from me because I made several errors. However, I became very good at cutting.
Yes, teachers are very particular about the lamination.
Absolutely.
So
funny. Oh, that's funny. Go ahead, Jen.
I was just going to say, it's really interesting. So I worked in a K-12 school, primarily as the high school math and science teacher. And so, we were kind of divided, and there was often talk about prep time and who needed more. And you'd hear the people that are marking the essays or writing all the math exams, and they'd say, well, we need more because it's, and I'm like, no, do you know how much time it takes to print all those names and put all those things in there? And then the value of that early intervention, that PUF programming, and I did not become as aware of it until I became a parent, and the recognition and realization of how those early foundations really do impact all the way through. So kudos to you, because I could not do your job. It takes a very special person to do your role, but I value those that take that on.
Lorna does have another follow-up question, but just for those that may be listening from outside of our province, can you explain what we mean when we utilize that acronym PUF? It's quite familiar for us within the Zoom call, but for those that might be listening, wondering what that means.
Yeah, sure. So PUF in Alberta stands for Program Unit Funding. And so it is designed to support students within that young age range. So the 2 years, 8 months to 6 years with that are experiencing severe delays in any of the developmental domains. So we see a lot of students that enter with the severe delays in an expressive or a receptive communication, but there is an ever increasing complexity of students that we are seeing. So, and we have talked a bit about whether that trend is due to COVID, what some people in education world are calling COVID babies. So there's that where there was such a lacking opportunity for our littles as they were growing in their 0 to 2 phase to be able to interact and socialize and understand what it is like to have a relationship. So we are, I think, seeing a little bit of those effects right now.
Yeah, we are so fortunate, Erin, in Alberta to be able to have access to that funding to support those early years, because it is so integral, especially the communication and the speech, language, expressive, receptive piece, that if we can get a good start on that, then kids are just so much more successful in the rest of their career.
Yeah, it's so true. And we know that if students don't have those supports and that foundation established by about grade 3, that we really start to see the effects of that grade 4 and beyond. So it is really important. And I am proud to be part of a division that really prioritizes early intervention PUF programming. It is really nice to work for a school division that feels and sees that importance.
Yeah, for sure. But it's not easy work. I know, because I served as in that PUF coordination role for a number of years as well, and supporting schools in trying to design programming. But what we often see, Erin, is in schools, and Jen kind of alluded to this already a little bit, that we often look at kindergarten as being different, and that everything that happens in kindergarten is different than grades 1 to 12, right? And I kind of laugh, because there are so many things that you do in those early years programming that are so impactful and could have great influence on the other grades as well. But in thinking that, when we turn to collaborative response, I think that, we've really focused in on what happens in the school, and there's lots of schools who will put collaborative team meetings in place for their grades 1 to 6, but not kindergarten, because we're not really sure about how to manage that with kindergarten. But you have certainly embraced the idea of collaborative response in your work as coordinator. And I'd love for you to be able to talk a little bit about, what was it about collaborative response that you saw had a nice connection with the work that you're doing in early years?
I think it really just started with the conversations when I moved into this role with our teachers and our EA staff, who were saying these complexities are so great. And I think they were feeling like there was a bit of a barrier as to how they could best support the ever complex needs. There's students that are physical or increasingly defiant, or not able to do a toileting routine, for example, when they are entering kindergarten. And so staff was saying, we're at a bit of a loss. We need something to meet those needs. And so I have been part of our admin team and watching the collaborative response be implemented across our schools. And I thought, why not? Why is this not something that we can do in early learning? I know teachers have also said, we kind of feel like we are left out a little bit. There's a school team meeting or a collaborative team meeting, and we don't really fit there. They're kind of their own little island of educators, their needs, and also the pedagogy is quite different. And so I thought, what, this is a really great opportunity for our kindergarten and pre-kindergarten staff to come together and just dive on in.
Awesome.
That's so good.
Well, let's break down then a little bit of that journey. Erin, can you just describe what it's looked like as you've implemented collaborative response as a mindset for your early learning teams?
Yeah, so we really started sort of dabbling in it a little last year, and we looked at pieces of it and talked about team norms and used those to structure some of our support meetings and our IPP meetings. And then we started our work in our continuum of supports and started to categorize and add the supports for our tiers of interventions. And so this year we were lucky enough to move to half-day Friday so that our afternoons are dedicated to professional learning for all of our teachers and for our EAs for a set number of days. And so I just took that and ran with it. We get to connect as an early learning team once a month. And so we started our first time together, doing a breakout activity, talking about what is the purpose of a collaborative team meeting. And the small groups got together and they really discussed what that purpose was, and they determined what the value of that would be. And they really seemed to be excited. There was kind of like that ignited spirit of, wow, I think that this could be something good. And you know, sometimes as a leader, we'll try to kind of sell something to our team and try to encourage their engagement, but this just seemed to happen on its own. So it was great.
Oh, sorry. Absolutely great.
Nope.
I have to just jump in because Erin, you had sent me an email right after that first meeting and you were so excited about how everyone just grabbed onto that idea and were really excited about the potential of what they could do during that time. So that's
it was great. We had our teaching staff that was the original plan, was that they would be in the afternoons doing the collaborative work. So the first time we came together, we did do a mock collaborative team meeting just so that our educational assistants were able to see what the teachers were getting up to on their Friday PD. And as it played out, our educational assistants were like, we absolutely need this as well. Is there any way that we can join in this process? And so I went back and revamped the professional learning schedule for the year, because I just think that there's so much value in being able to support all of our early learning staff. And there's just so much expertise and personal experiences within every staff member, whether you're a brand new hire or you've been with our division for several years. There's just so much to give. So
we'll be right back to continue this episode.
When we create continuums of supports for our school focused on established priorities, we are answering the question of what will we do when faced with questions of how to support the needs of our students. But the creation of these continuums are only the first step. Join us for the online workshop, 10 Considerations when Utilizing and Refining Your Continuums of Support, part of our Supporting Collaborative Response series. In this workshop, I will share 5 ways to effectively utilize your continuum of supports within your school and 5 ways to further refine your continuums to ensure maximum impact. I'll also be sharing numerous resources, templates, and samples, as well as a copy of the recording. Those joining live will also have the chance to interact with me with questions they may have at the end of this session. Register today to learn more about this critical collaborative structure integral within a school's collaborative response.
And now back to our conversation. Erin, I'm really excited about this too, because when we think about leading collaborative response, I was with groups of schools yesterday where they had where do we start? Like there's so many different components and elements that go into collaborative response. It's complex work. Where do we start? And my suggestion always is start with the collaborative team meeting. It's the linchpin to this work. It's often very different than how we normally talk about students. And there's opportunities for some early wins by introducing that and then starting to build out your other layers and fusing your data and evidence and continuum of support. So share with us a little bit, even just the logistics of that collaborative team meeting as it sits now, because I know you have a number of early learning staff across the division?
Yeah, we have about 35 staff that are joining us on those Fridays. And so we chose to break them into 4 groups based kind of on the demographics. And so we have our 3 city schools are each their own team, and then our rural schools come together, and they are mixed with teachers and our educational assistants. And then occasionally our occupational therapy assistants and our speech and language assistants are joining us too. And so they really just use those templates that have been provided and lay it out. They got together and we determined team roles that first time, and they have the place cards and they assign those roles at the beginning, and then there's a facilitator who has been doing such a great job every time. They switch them around each time they get together, and so someone else gets to be a facilitator the next time. But yeah.
That's outstanding. And again, we often talk about, the fidelity to the process. And we sometimes hear schools that say, well, the norms feel a little bit awkward, so we don't really do that, or the roles feels awkward. But what's been your experience about some of those specific processes and structures impacting the conversation?
They're really important, because when we have traditionally done those conversations around students, I feel like there has been the time where it's a good thing. Teachers are feeling that they're in a space where they can share frustrations, but oftentimes there isn't really a solution that comes to that.
Right.
So by using the structures where we've assigned roles, there's someone that's kind of keeping us on task, and someone who is setting the time to say, okay, we have 5 minutes here, let's make sure we're staying on track, so that 60 minutes is really able to get from start to finish, and you're not mid-meeting and having to call it over. So and then also looking at those team norms, I think everybody has that opportunity to talk about what is important to them in a meeting. How are you going to get value from this meeting? Or what things are going to deter you from seeing value in the meeting? And that was really the question that we led with when we were talking about team norms, is think about a meeting that you've attended. It can be anything: parent council, your son's hockey, board meeting, anything. What is it that you loved about that meeting, and what is it that you detested about that meeting? And the brainstorming just came out, and then groups categorized their ideas into their norms.
So Erin, my last piece, and that is outstanding. It's exactly what we talk about as well, but I love the idea of brainstorming what's been a valuable meeting, what hasn't, and use that to help formulate as we come to craft our own norms. So my last follow-up question in regards to the collaborative structures and processes that you've put. So we've talked about the collaborative team meeting. What do the other layers look like for the early learning team? And then what have you seen as some of the early returns in regards to impact of these conversations?
So we are only diving into the 2 structures of the collaborative planning and the collaborative team meeting. We are still having the schools carry out the school team meetings and the case consult. Okay. And so we have learning support teachers within each of our schools. And so they are able to go through and make sure that those universal and differentiated supports are in place with our staff. And so that, to me, is probably the best place for that to happen. And then the case consult is kind of where I would come in and support. So if we've spent, that kind of 4 to 6 week time period trying some of those universal and targeted supports, and they are still not successful, we might start to look at some other avenues. Maybe we need an assessment from our occupational therapist, or maybe the child needs to head on over for a hearing assessment. So we use the collaborative planning and the collaborative team meeting structures more to our benefit.
The second part of that question was just, what are you seeing as impact, before I turn it over to Jen? I know she's dying to bring forth a question as well.
Yeah, I think that the biggest impact really has been about those collegial connections and that sense of community, just knowing that they are not alone, especially our educational assistants. We have amazing assistants who come to us and they don't have the training behind them that some of our teachers have, or, some of those experiences that teachers have. And so we just want them to know that there is a way that we can support you. And they also there's been comments about the appreciation of that opportunity to meet and discuss issues and then determine the solutions within a dedicated block of time. And so they know that their days are from start to finish, go, go, go. They don't have time to stop and connect with one another. And often the day starts and the day ends and they barely have an opportunity to say hello. So this has provided them that opportunity to sit together as a team and talk about those students and support the students.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Erin.
Erin, having come from a small rural school, like I said, K-12, Northern Alberta, I really appreciate the consciousness that's gone into connecting those teachers that are individual in their roles, in their different rural schools where they may be an hour or so apart.
Yeah.
Now, I'm a self-professed data geek. I love data.
This question is brought to you by WeCollab. Designed by educators for educators, this comprehensive digital system aligns with the foundational components of collaborative response. Moving from conversation to action, WeCollab empowers classrooms, schools, and systems to provide the very best response for each and every child by informing action-based decision-making with data and evidence supporting student success.
When you're bringing together these teachers who are operating in different buildings, how are they accessing data to have those conversations where there's common grounds about student needs and what supports are required?
So when we are looking at our early learners, our data does look a little different from what it might look like in that grade 1 to 12. And in kindergarten, we are using some numeracy and some literacy assessments. But in our pre-kindergarten classrooms, we are really looking at those developmental assessments and screeners to guide all of the supports and our information. So
that's great. And we know that, how important looking at data and evidence is to help us really identify students. And I know, within those early years, we really depend on speech language pathologists and occupational therapists to help us out with, what are those specific areas that we need to be able to focus on for our little ones.
Yeah, and that then really helps flag who we should be really looking at for some early supports, and then defining out the key issues that we're seeing that we need to address.
I learned so much about early literacy and early numeracy in my learning coach role that I totally took for granted as a high school teacher, because when you break reading down into things like phonological awareness and rhyming patterns and blends, and there are a lot of different areas just in reading that children could need support. And then when you translate from speech to reading and all of those things that they're trying to do, like, it is complex. So again, I honor the early years because of all the things that have to be considered at those stages to give these kids a strong foundation.
Yeah. And our kindergarten and pre-kindergarten, it is really about that emergent literacy, emergent numeracy. So when we're talking about that phonological awareness or the rhyming, those things are happening in our little learner classrooms, but they look a little different. They are happening through more of an exploration, play-based environment. And we want to give our kids that opportunity to discover and understand the world around them by themselves.
Oh, the play base is so integral for those little people. That 3 and 4 year olds and even 5-year-olds need to be able to build that understanding through play. So that makes me think, Erin, about the continuum of supports. As you mentioned earlier that you had started on the development of that with your team, and just love to be able to hear, how have you gone about doing that, and where are you at? Knowing that it's forever evolving.
It is definitely, we have talked about it being a working document. We're going to add things, and even our last session, there was things that teachers and assistants were like, absolutely no way. This is no good anymore. Let's get that out of there. And so we took it out and just created a new document right there for them to be able to use in their collaborative team meetings. And their collaborative planning. So last year we started by talking about what supports were within the classrooms, what were we doing every day for all of our learners, and then what kind of things were we differentiating for our learners who weren't quite able to get things universally. And the list was long and the ideas were amazing. And so then we had to categorize. We had to determine how are we going to lay that out so that teachers were able to best use that continuum of supports. So the categories were created based actually around the developmental domains of our early learners. And then this year that was presented, we did have new staff join us. So we had a conversation about what that was and what the tiers of support are, and talked about even the tier 3 and the tier 4 and what that looks like. And often our pre-kindergarten classrooms are coming in as the tier 3 level needs for support. So we do keep that in mind as we're creating our continuum of supports as well. And then we added to that list, refined, like I said, took a few things off that just didn't make sense anymore, and then printed a nice copy for everyone to access. So, and that is the hope that when those conversations are happening at school levels or with that school support team, that document is being referred to regularly so that those tools can be pulled out and used.
Yeah, that's awesome. Hey, Erin, could we share your continuum of supports along with this podcast? Can we share it in the notes?
Yeah, sure.
Hey, that would be fantastic.
Yeah, sure. I will share that to you right after we're done.
Awesome.
The newest one.
Now, Erin, it is abundantly clear that you've spent a lot of time thinking, processing, working through collaborative response as we hear things like the case consult teams and tier 3 and language that we're nodding and familiar with and you're sharing. If there's any of our viewers or listeners that are feeling like they're not quite sure what some of these things mean, we'll also pop into the notes a free article that we have for collaborative response that can really help break down some of these ideas at an introductory level. So that link will be there as well. we have,
and
a
of course, we
book.
have our book that was published by Corwin in 2022, Collaborative Response, 3 Foundational Components that Transform How We Respond to the Needs of Learners. And for our listeners today, we'd love to be able to give you 10% off by using the code JL Podcast 10, and we'll include that
That's
in the notes as well.
So our last piece here, Erin, is we always turn to Jen for a question that we love asking guests when they come on. I'll hand it over to Jen to take the lead.
So before
Sure
I ask
thing.
the question, Erin, Kurtis and Lorna are always far too humble and do not sell themselves nearly enough with all the ideas that they have brought from a grassroots perspective, but they are listed as one of Corwin's best-selling sets of authors. And that book has been on the bestseller list since its release. So I just want to give them a shout out for all the work that they've done in sharing the ideas and growing the collaborative response movement, because it really is transformational when we talk about how we're going to support kids.
I agree. Yeah. And the work that we have done with them as a division has just been so easy to jump in and get the work going. And both Kurtis and Lorna have an understanding of people who are just acquiring something new, and they're very patient and kind and understanding. So yeah, it has been a great process.
Oh, thanks, Erin.
Thank you.
In the spirit of, if you knew then what you know now, what advice might you give yourself in relation to leading the work of collaborative response back then?
I think it would just be make it a priority, let the team dig in and just do it. I did spend a lot of time thinking things through and meeting with the consultants within Jigsaw and chatting it through with Lorna. And I just thought it through so much. And I think that we could have started it last year if I would have just opened it up and said, go for it, because I do trust that the professionals are going to do what they've been tasked to do, especially because this group was looking for those built-in structures and that time. So like every educator does, those professionals take it and do their magic with it, refine it, and make it better than I could ever envision. So my advice to myself would have been, let go and just let your team dig in.
Oh, that's hard for many people
Absolutely
in
is.
leadership to be. So that's great advice, because we often, of course, we always share that phrase, ready, fire, aim, that, you just get yourself prepared, but then jump right in and get going. And we have lots and lots of people we work with who have lots of questions before they actually move forward. So that is great advice. Erin, this has been so much fun being able to join you and talk through your journey, and what a great experience, especially in that early learning area, which we know is sometimes unique, but can still be impacted by the collaborative response mindset. So thank you so much, Erin, for your time today.
Thank you, Erin.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Pleasure.
Yes, you too, Jen.
All right. Take care, Erin.
You as well.
So I'm always blown away when we can engage in these conversations with people leading collaborative response within their own organizations. And I think today it was really interesting to hear that overlay of individuals that are leading early learning within their schools, but then collaborating as an entire system. I find that fascinating. What really stuck with me was the idea, when we think of those 4 layers of team, of collaborative planning, collaborative team meeting, school support, case consult, I find it very, very interesting how they've come to envision that the collaborative planning and the collaborative team meeting happens across the system so that they can leverage the exceptional expertise of people engaging in early learning practices at multiple different sites. But then when the conversation becomes more specific to individual students in the school support and case consult, then that still occurs at the school level because we'll have the right people involved. I thought that was such a fascinating way to be able to leverage expertise across the system, but still recognizing within the layers of the team that there's school-based conversations that become integral for more intensive discussions.
Well, and what a great way to enhance the learning and understanding with that team, because often there is one kindergarten teacher in a school, especially in small schools.
Oh yeah.
Or there might even be a part-time kindergarten teacher, but this way they still are accessing the learning part together through collaborative planning and learning together and sharing strategies through collaborative
growing
team
that
meetings.
expertise of the team
Yeah.
when there may be individuals that feel somewhat isolated in their own schools.
But then when coming to talk about specific students and their programming, that needs to go back to the school levels for the people who are actually engaging in that work with them, right? So yeah, Erin has done, like she said, she took a lot of time to think about, you know, how do we revise what we're currently doing, and she has done some fantastic things across the district in connecting all those early learning educators, which is really, really fantastic.
I loved her approach with the breakout activity she talked about, where, you know, here's the collaborative team meeting, but having the teachers identify, you know, what they felt the purpose of that was, how they were going to take value out of the approach that was being suggested from a system level, and giving them ownership and empowering them to make this what was going to work for them in their context, but again, connecting across the system.
Well, and even further to that, Jen, that's absolutely true about the teachers that she's been engaging with, but her ability to be able to include the educational assistants as well, and how excited and empowered they were to be part of that process. And her intention originally was just to have them join the first meeting so that they understood what was happening. And then they were going to do other professional learning, but they were so excited about the process and being part of it that they asked her if they could be involved ongoing. So that's really exciting. We often talk about, you know, how empowering this is for educational assistants, both in contributing to the discussion, but also for them in learning those new strategies. So that's exciting to hear that happening.
But when you talk about that adjustment, it comes back to her key learning that she shared at the end of the idea of trust the team, that the team is going to make suggestions and next steps. But I think it's always such an interesting balance of being able to trust the team, but while still ensuring there's fidelity to some core principles in the process, where she said, you know, we knew we needed to establish norms. We knew we had to have roles, like all the things that we talk about that can't be cherry picked out of the process because they are so integral to the process. She ensured that those were maintained while trusting the team to make adjustments in regards to some of the format, who's invited, all of that as well.
I think that Erin really exhibits that idea that we often share around, you know, setting the banks of the river and then letting the river flow. So really, really understanding that everyone has contributions to make and that are going to help with the process moving forward, but that as leaders we still set those expectations so that we have some consistency and we have some fidelity in the process.
You can tell she has integrity in her understanding of collaborative response as a whole. I mean, she was able to touch on all of the key foundational principles with ease, coming from an early years environment, right? Okay, let's talk about data, and here's all the different things that we're using. Let's talk about structures, and this is how we're leveraging our half-day Fridays. Let's talk about the continuum of supports, and this is how we're categorizing them based on the domains of development in early learning, and recognizing the way that those pieces come together and really enhance the work that's being done.
Yeah, absolutely. So Jen, we're always at that part of the episode where we turn to you to see if you can synthesize what are the key learnings that we can take away today from our conversation with Erin.
Systemic approach is contextual. So taking a look at how they have leveraged their approach with tier 1 and tier 2 conversations happening across the system, and tier 3 and tier 4 conversations happening within each school with the key players that are there. And the purpose of enhancing teacher efficacy and professional practice by talking about teacher efficacy and professional practice.
Absolutely.
The second piece is just the inclusion of the people at the table. And so recognizing the value of every person that is connected to a child. So she referenced at some point, and I don't know if we got it recorded or not, that notion of every child deserves a team. And so where that team includes more than the teacher, then the EAs that need to be a part of those conversations
The
should have
occupational
value, and
therapists,
Speech
physical
language
therapists,
pathologists. Yeah.
they all have a place at the table for those students. And then the last part is that balance of trusting the team while ensuring the fidelity of the process. And so Kurtis, you said it right there. Don't micromanage. It is a learning process of teaching everyone what the components are and how they're intertwined to ensure that those foundational principles are implemented with fidelity, but allowing them to run with it and refine it and enhance it in a way that makes sense for them.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So thank you so much for that, Jen. It was a great conversation with Erin. And as we alluded to at the start of the episode, we are making some shifts within our organization that we're really excited about. One of the things that we will be doing is sunsetting our Putting the Pieces Together podcast. This has been the place where we have connected in the past with partners. And as we shared, we actually are going to use the Leading Collaborative Response forum to be able to have those connections. So if anyone's listening to this and not familiar with putting the pieces together, we'll make sure to include it into the show notes so that you can go back and listen to the many, many partners. How many would we have there, Jen? How many episodes would you suggest is in there?
49 or so.
49 or so. Okay, so we have that there, and we know that there will be, as we transition, that your involvement in the podcast is going to go away, which is sad, but it's also very exciting when we think about the reason why, and that is with the growing interest and demand for the WeCollab software that is really intended to help support schools and divisions when implementing collaborative response. Jen, do you want to share a little bit about your involvement and building out some of the WeCollab supports that we're really putting attention to?
Oh, absolutely. So, I mean, you know how much I love the software, having been a part of it from when it was a napkin conversation before it was even developed. So I've seen the growth in it, as really it's been designed by educators for educators and then taken to a development team to put into practice. And so over time, with the feedback of the partners that have used it, it has built from just being a digital place for cards to student profiles to places to record all the meeting notes to seeing actions and supports put in place for students. And the potential within the system is incredible. One of the things I love that you've added over the years, and having been a part of refining that, is that student support plan module, because again, it's part of the conversation about how we support students. So I'm really excited that I get the opportunity, now that it's been rewritten and refined one more time, to have those support documents and support videos that are being part of development, and the ongoing showcasing of really how it can enhance schools and districts that are engaging in collaborative response in terms of efficiency and effectiveness of the communication and transparency from those meetings.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Jen. And we do have a few more episodes to be able to continue to thank you for the amazing dedication and efforts you've brought into the podcasting elements, which we're excited to place into the WeCollab user support resources as well. So we have a few more episodes. It is our intent that as we move into 2024, that we finalize that transition. So a few more weeks before that happens.
I will be sad to not be connecting with partners in the same way, but I'm still looking forward to connecting with partners in the work that Jigsaw Learning is doing. So Thank you both for this opportunity.
Thanks so much, Jen.
Thank you. All right, take care.
For more on collaborative response, visit jigsawlearning.ca or join the JL Insider to receive access to newly added resources and content. Make sure to follow us on social media. Subscribe to the podcast and the Jigsaw Learning YouTube channel to access past and upcoming episodes. Join us again to continue to build your own capacity and leading collaborative response in your context.